It excludes Jews. I'm not able to understand why Jews have been left out from the Citizenship Amendment Act. And on social media, when I posted a paper that I'd written, somebody said, well, Jews have Israel. Okay? But we have one of my very good friends is a Jew in Calcutta. Jews also have India. And if Jews have Israel, then Christians and Buddhists have their own countries too. We've included Christians and Buddhists, but we've left out Jews. That doesn't make sense to me. I thought, let me begin by really addressing the question that I guess is foremost on everyone's mind, which is that is the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act, unconstitutional? Is it anti-Muslim? And is it pro-Hindu? Let me begin by telling you about the unsecular origins of the Indian citizenship provisions of the Indian Constitution. You see, when the country was partitioned in 1947, two waves of migration took place from West Pakistan to India. In the first wave, which occurred after March 1947, 1st March 1947 is when the disturbances began. There was a wave of migrations from West Pakistan to India. That was a migration of Hindus and Sikhs. They came in large numbers, obviously. But there was a second wave of migration which took place from West Pakistan to India, and that occurred in 1948. Where interestingly, large numbers of Indian Muslims who had left India to go to Pakistan realized that Pakistan was not what they had thought it might be and therefore returned to India. Now you see, the return of the Muslim in India created problems for the Indian administration. By the way, the law considered these two categories to be different. So the law referred to Hindus and Sikhs as displaced persons, but the law referred to Muslims who left as evacuees. So these two are different categories in the law. And you see, Muslims who left India to go to Pakistan, their property was referred to as evacuee property. And their property was being used to rehabilitate Hindus and Sikhs who had come from West Pakistan to India. So the question arose, if Muslims want to come back to India, what will happen to their evacuee property? So correspondence ensued among leaders whose secular credentials are absolutely unquestionable. Leaders like Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And Sardar Patel wrote to Nehru and said that, look, the return of the Indian Muslim to India is creating trouble. We are in a charged communal environment. There's been an influx of a large number of refugees in India. And if we give the perception that we are going to now remove Hindus and Sikhs from the evacuee property and give it back to Muslims, this is really going to be something that's going to feed the communal poison of organizations like the RSS. This is really to paraphrase what Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel said. And it was in this context that the Indian government introduced on 19th July 1948 a system that was essentially designed to keep Muslims from coming back to India. That was called the permit system. Under this system, if a Muslim wanted to come back to India, mind you, the system did not mention Hindu or Muslim. All it said was that if you were somebody who left India and wanted to return to India, in other words, Muslim, then the provincial government where your property was located had the power to veto your return to India. In other words, a permit for permanent resettlement, as it was called, could be refused to you if your property was being used to rehabilitate displaced persons, in other words, Hindus and Sikhs. This system essentially was entrenched in the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution, in Articles 5, 6 and 7, did not mention Hindu, Sikh, Muslim. It did not say anything about religion. So on its face, it appears to be extremely secular. But when you investigate a little bit further and you read the debates of the Constituent Assembly, you realize that actually there were two hidden premises in the Indian Constitution. For those who came prior to the permit system being introduced, 19 July 1948, who were presumed largely to be Hindus and Sikhs, citizenship was automatic, in the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. All that was required is that you had to arrive in India and live in India since then. That's very easy. But for those who came after 19 July 1948, especially those who had left India and now sought to return, you required a permit for permanent resettlement. Now you see, in the Constituent Assembly, there was a great debate that ensued. There was some voices who said that, look, we should give citizenship on the basis of religion. So there was a man by the name of Mr. Deshmukh who was an Oxford-educated barrister. There was a man by the name of Pandit Thakurdas Bhargav who was responsible for the directive principle of state policy that calls upon the state to prevent the slaughter of cows and cattle. Also responsible for the introduction of the word reasonable into the Indian constitution when it comes to our liberties. These people essentially said that we should have citizenship on the basis of religion. To address their criticism in the Constituent Assembly, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru stood up and he explained these hidden premises in the Indian Constitution. He said that, look, obviously we can't have two separate systems for Hindus and Sikhs on the one hand and for Muslims on the other. But for those who came prior to 19 July 1948, and we presume most of them were Hindus and Sikhs, citizenship was automatic. We accepted the great first wave of migration practically without any demur or inquiry. Those were his words. For those who come after 19 July 1948, we have the permit system. Now, mind you, when the permit system was introduced, the first president of India, President Rajendra Prasad, was extremely worried that a very large number of permits would be issued. And he wrote to Nehru and said that, look, you're going to issue 10,000 permits a month. But actually, by August 1948, when Nehru stood up in the Constituent Assembly to explain the citizenship provisions of the Indian Constitution, Nehru explained that only 2,000 permits for